Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People's Story. Let me give you some background first. I'm late 20s, and I inherited my great-grandfather's ranch about 3 years ago. It's not your typical cattle operation, though. We specialize in raising prize-winning breeding bulls, which means our animals are worth tens of thousands of dollars each. The ranch has been in my family for 4 generations, and I've been working to modernize operations while maintaining the traditions that made us successful. The most important thing people need to understand about our operation is biosecurity. When you're dealing with animals worth more than most people's cars, you can't mess around with disease prevention. We have strict protocols because diseases can be transmitted through soil and organic matter on shoes, tires, clothing, you name it. If our herd gets contaminated, we could lose everything. That's why we have professional signage at every entrance clearly stating this is private property with biosecurity protocols in effect. About a year ago, some travel bloggers started writing about a hidden waterfall and creek on what they called undiscovered land. Problem is, that creek runs right through the middle of my property, specifically through the pasture where I keep my most valuable bull. This animal, let's call him Zeus, is worth close to $200,000 and is the cornerstone of our breeding program. The blogger's post encouraged people to ignore the grumpy farmer signs to find this hidden gem. You can imagine how well that went over with me. I'd been dealing with occasional trespassers for months, but most people would leave when they saw the signs or when I politely explained the situation. This particular Saturday was different. I was using my drone to check fence lines in the remote sections when I spotted something that made my stomach drop. There was a white luxury SUV parked crooked near our main security gate, and the chain lock had been cut clean through. This wasn't someone who accidentally wandered onto the property. This was deliberate. I jumped in my utility vehicle and drove out there as fast as I could. Fresh tire tracks led directly toward Zeus's pasture, which made my blood pressure spike. When I got closer, I could hear loud voices and laughter coming from the direction of the creek. What I found when I got there still makes me angry just thinking about it. A family of 4 had set up a full picnic spread right next to the creek. The woman was trying to take selfies with Zeus, who was clearly agitated and backing away from them. She had a selfie stick extended toward him and was encouraging her kids to offer him pieces of their sandwiches. Her husband was standing back looking uncomfortable, but not doing anything to stop her. I approached them calmly, even though internally I was freaking out. My first concern was immediate safety, both theirs and my bull's. I called out to them that they needed to step away from the animal immediately because he wasn't a pet and they were stressing him. The woman, I'll call her entitled Mom, barely glanced at me before rolling her eyes and telling me she was having a family moment and asking who I thought I was. When I explained that I was the owner of the ranch and they were trespassing on private property, she laughed. She actually laughed and told me this was nature and it belonged to everyone. Then she started going on about how she was a travel influencer with over 50,000 followers and she was sharing the beauty of this place. She acted like I should be grateful for the free publicity. I pointed to the biosecurity warning sign that was literally 10 feet away from where they were standing. I explained as calmly as I could that this wasn't just about trespassing. They could be carrying diseases that could force us to put down our entire herd. I told them the bull was worth more than their car and asked them to pack up and leave immediately. That's when things got ugly. She stepped even closer to Zeus and told me I couldn't do anything to stop her. She threatened to post about our encounter online and said her followers would ruin our reputation. She called me an uneducated farmer who was trying to bully a mother and her children, but then she crossed a line that changed everything. To get what she called her final shot, she deliberately stepped past me and moved even closer to Zeus, saying she was getting her photo and there was nothing I could do about it. That's when I pulled out my phone and started recording. I clearly stated for the record that I was informing them their actions were being recorded, that they had trespassed, and that they had just knowingly crossed a biosecurity line into a quarantine pasture after being warned of the risks. The mood shifted instantly. Both she and her husband froze when they realized I was serious about the recording and the biosecurity protocols. I changed my tone to something more formal and explained that because they had deliberately breached our biosecurity protocol, I was now legally obligated by state agricultural law to report a potential contamination event. I told them this would trigger a mandatory ranch-wide quarantine where my entire herd would have to be isolated and undergo expensive testing for diseases. We wouldn't be able to sell any animals or move them off the property for at least 30 to 60 days pending results. I looked directly at the entitled mom and told her my lawyer would be contacting them regarding full financial damages. I estimated the initial damages at around $50,000 for quarantine costs, veterinary testing, and lost income from sales we'd now miss. Then I told them to wait there while I called the sheriff's department to file an official trespassing report. I walked a few steps away and made two very real phone calls. First to the sheriff's office to report the trespassing and property damage from the cut lock. Second to the state veterinarian's office to self-report the potential biosecurity breach as required by law. The family stood there listening to every word, and I could see the reality of the situation finally dawning on them. When the deputy arrived about 20 minutes later, he took one look at the cut lock, the clear signage, and listened to my calm explanation of events. He issued the woman a citation for criminal trespassing and took photos of the damage. The deputy was professional and completely unimpressed when she tried to explain that she was an influencer. After they left, I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. That night, the entitled mom posted a heavily edited video on her social media accounts. It showed my stern face and her crying with a caption about a psychotic farmer who had held her family hostage for trying to enjoy nature. The video was edited to make me look like the aggressor and completely left out the part about the cut lock, the signs, and the biosecurity warnings. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of angry messages and comments on our ranch's social media pages. Her followers were calling me everything from a monster to worse. Some were even threatening to show up at the ranch to teach me a lesson. That's when I decided to fight fire with fire. I uploaded my own video to our ranch's website and social media accounts. I titled it A Lesson in Ranch Safety and Respect. The video included the full, unedited recording of our encounter, drone footage showing their car and them walking through the property, and a calm, educational explanation of what biosecurity is and why it's vital for ranchers. I showed pictures of our signs and the cut lock they'd damaged. I explained the actual financial and animal welfare risks involved when people ignore these protocols. I kept the tone educational rather than angry, focusing on the facts and the importance of respecting private property and agricultural operations. The video took off in rural and agricultural circles. It was shared by farming associations, veterinary pages, and property rights groups. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. People were outraged that someone would cut locks and ignore biosecurity warnings just for social media content. Within a week, the entitled mom's original video had been shared to agricultural forums where people could see both versions side by side. Her followers started turning against her when they saw the unedited footage and realized she'd lied about what happened. Two of her sponsors, an outdoor clothing brand and a snack company, publicly dropped her after the full story came out. Meanwhile, my lawyer had been busy preparing a formal demand letter. The evidence was overwhelming. We had video footage, the police report, documentation of the property damage, and records of the required quarantine procedures I'd had to initiate because of their actions. About 2 weeks after the incident, their lawyer contacted mine asking about a settlement. Faced with irrefutable evidence and a potential lawsuit that could financially destroy them, they had no choice but to negotiate. The settlement covered all our quarantine-related costs, the replacement of our damaged security equipment, and installation of a new advanced gate system. They also had to pay for the veterinary testing and monitoring that was required after their biosecurity breach. The total amount was substantial enough that I'm confident they'll think twice before trespassing on anyone else's property. But the best part came about 3 months later. The quarantine was lifted after all our animals tested clean, and Zeus was cleared to return to the show circuit. At the first major livestock show of the season, he took grand champion, which added significantly to his breeding value and our reputation. I posted a photo of Zeus with his new ribbon and a caption thanking everyone who had supported us during the whole ordeal. The caption read something like, "Zeus is happy, healthy, and officially a grand champion." Turns out respecting boundaries and biosecurity is a prize-winning strategy. The entitled mom's social media accounts went private shortly after our settlement, and I heard through the grapevine that she stopped posting travel content altogether. Her attempt to shame us backfired spectacularly and actually educated thousands of people about the importance of agricultural biosecurity and property rights. Looking back, I'm almost grateful this happened. It forced me to become more proactive about ranch security and social media presence. We now have better gates, more cameras, and a stronger online community that supports agricultural operations. What started as a violation of our property became an opportunity to educate people and build connections with folks who understand and respect what we do. The whole experience taught me that sometimes the best way to deal with entitled people is to let the facts speak for themselves. When someone tries to twist the truth for their own benefit, having clear documentation and staying calm can turn their own actions against them. Zeus is doing great, by the way. He seems completely unbothered by his brief encounter with social media fame and is focused on what he does best, being an amazing breeding bull. The ranch is more secure than ever, and we've actually had several positive visits from people who saw our story and wanted to learn more about responsible agricultural tourism. I still get the occasional message from people who saw the original videos, mostly supportive comments from other ranchers and farmers who've dealt with similar situations. It's nice to know there's a community out there that understands the challenges we face and supports responsible land stewardship. As for the travel blogger who started this whole mess by promoting trespassing on private property, well, let's just say our story got picked up by enough agricultural publications that other landowners in the area are now aware of the problem. I heard that blogger got quite a few angry calls from property owners after our story went viral. The funny thing is, we're actually not opposed to people enjoying nature responsibly. We've since partnered with the local tourism board to create legitimate guided tours of parts of our property that don't interfere with our operations. It's been successful and gives people a chance to learn about modern ranching while respecting our biosecurity protocols, but anyone thinking they can just cut our locks and ignore our signs is going to find out the hard way that we take property rights and animal welfare seriously. The next time someone tells me I can't do anything about trespassers, I'll just show them the video of Zeus wearing his grand champion ribbon. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being successful at what you do while teaching others to respect your boundaries. Update. 6 months later. I thought you all might want to know how things have played out since my original post about the entitled family who trespassed on our ranch. The response to my story was incredible, and there have been some interesting developments I wanted to share. First, the legal stuff is completely wrapped up. The settlement we reached covered everything we asked for and then some. Without going into specific numbers, let's just say it was enough to upgrade our entire security system, including new cameras, better gates, and even a drone monitoring system that alerts us to any unauthorized vehicles on the property. The entitled mom and her husband paid every penny without fighting it once their lawyer. The social media fallout for her was worse than I expected. After our video went viral, several agricultural journalism outlets picked up the story. One major farming magazine did a feature article about biosecurity and property rights that included our case as an example. The entitled mom apparently tried to delete all her content and rebrand herself, but the internet never forgets. Her influencer career is basically over, and I heard through mutual connections that she's working a regular office job now. What really surprised me was how much positive attention this brought to our ranch. We've had visitors from all over the state wanting to learn about our breeding program and biosecurity protocols. The Agricultural Extension Office asked me to speak at 3 different conferences about property security and disease prevention. I never thought I'd become a spokesperson for anything, but apparently our story resonated with a lot of people in similar situations. The partnership with the tourism board has been amazing. We now offer monthly educational tours where people can learn about sustainable ranching practices and see our animals up close in a controlled environment. The tours fill up weeks in advance, and we've had families drive hours just to attend. It's brought in supplemental income and helped educate the public about what modern agriculture really looks like. Zeus has become something of a celebrity in breeding circles. After his grand champion win, we've had inquiries from ranchers across the country wanting to use him for their breeding programs. His stud fees have increased significantly, which has been great for the ranch's financial stability. He seems to enjoy the attention during tours, probably because visitors now come with proper supervision and respect for boundaries. The travel blogger who originally promoted trespassing on our property reached out about 2 months ago with what I can only describe as a half-hearted apology. Apparently, several other landowners had contacted them about similar problems after our story went public. They've since updated their blog post to include warnings about respecting private property and getting permission before visiting locations. Too little too late in my opinion, but at least they're being more responsible now. One unexpected benefit has been connecting with other ranchers who've dealt with similar issues. We've started an informal network sharing information about trespassers, security solutions, and legal strategies. It's been helpful having people who understand the unique challenges of protecting agricultural operations from people who think food just magically appears in grocery stores. The county sheriff's department has also been more responsive to agricultural trespassing cases since our incident got attention. The deputy who responded to our call told me they've started taking these situations more seriously because they better understand the financial risks involved. They've even included agricultural crime prevention in their community outreach programs. We've had a few more attempted trespassers since then, but our upgraded security system catches them before they get far. Most people turn around as soon as they see the cameras and improved signage. The few who don't quickly change their minds when they realize they're being recorded and tracked. My wife, who I didn't mention much in the original post because she was traveling for work during the incident, has been incredibly supportive throughout this whole process. She's actually taken over managing our social media presence and the educational tour program. Her background in marketing has been invaluable in turning this negative situation into positive opportunities for the ranch. The most satisfying development has been hearing from other agricultural operations that have used our approach to deal with their own trespassing problems. Apparently, our emphasis on documentation, staying calm, and focusing on education rather than just anger has been effective for others too. Several ranchers have reached out to thank us for showing them a better way to handle these situations. Zeus is still doing great, by the way. He's scheduled for 2 more major shows this year, and his offspring from last season are already showing promising traits. The stress from that day with the trespassers seems like a distant memory for him. Animals are resilient that way. Looking ahead, we're planning to expand the educational program and maybe even offer workshops on agricultural biosecurity and property management. There's clearly a need for better understanding between rural operations and the general public. If our experience can help bridge that gap and prevent other ranchers from dealing with similar problems, then something good will have come from that frustrating day. The entitled mom hasn't attempted any contact since the settlement, which is exactly how I prefer it. Her husband did send a brief message through our lawyers apologizing for the whole situation and saying they've learned their lesson about respecting private property. I appreciated the gesture, even though it was probably motivated more by legal advice than genuine remorse. One last thing. We recently installed a memorial plaque near the creek where the incident happened. It's dedicated to responsible land stewardship and includes information about the importance of biosecurity in agriculture. It's become a popular stop during our tours and serves as a reminder that even beautiful natural areas can be part of someone's livelihood that deserves respect. Thanks to everyone who supported us through this ordeal. Your comments and shares really made a difference in how this story ended. Sometimes standing up for what's right leads to opportunities you never expected, and I'm grateful our ranch is stronger than ever because of it. Zeus sends his regards too. He's got another show next month, and we're confident he'll continue making our family proud while teaching people about the importance of respecting agricultural operations. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Hello! We have had issues with trespassers on our land, and my friend said I should post how I have dealt with them years prior. Some background: I live in a small town in the Midwest. People keep to themselves, and it is quite rare to have any spats with locals. The only instances of confrontation that come to mind are people not from my county or state. I should also note there is a university not far from my land, so it is not uncommon to see non-locals. Generally, they keep to themselves and stay clear of the locals, that is, until 2 a-holes from the university came to visit. I would describe myself as an outdoorsman. I love to fish, hunt, camp, hike, etc., so it follows I do some of these activities on my land. I have a few ponds and forest which I conduct a lot of hunting on, mostly waterfowl and deer. I have a permanent duck blind on one pond and a deer stand adjacent to my forest, both somewhat visible from the road. There is heaps of farmland around my area, not much public land to recreate with. Naturally, people will go to many lengths to recreate on my land, either legally or illegally. It was late September, early October, and I was out scouting for waterfowl on one of my ponds. When I came up to the property, I noticed a Subaru Outback pulled off the side of the road onto my land. If I had recognized the vehicle, it would not have raised alarm, but I did not, and the Outback had California plates. I stepped out of my vehicle to investigate. It was vacant. Then I smelled it. Smoke. Something was burning, and it was coming from my forest. I grabbed a shovel and ran towards it. When I got to my forest, I could also hear some crappy music playing. There I saw the 2 a-holes. They had pitched a tent and had a campfire roaring. I was left speechless. How could these duckers have the gall to trespass? Anyway, I approached them and none of them noticed. I turned off their music and they all looked at me in disbelief. There was silence. Then the a-holes spoke. A-hole 1. Hey man, why did you do that? You really killed our vibe. A-hole 2. Yeah dude, get lost. Me. Hello, please vacate ASAP. A-hole 1. Why? Me. This is private land. You need permission from the landowner to be here. A-hole 2. Can we have permission? Me. No, a-hole 2? Why? Me. I use this land for hunting. Now duck off a-hole 1. You are a murderer, killing defenseless animals. Me. I really do not give a duck, bud. Now vacate before I have your Subaru towed. This must have gotten through their stoned minds as they packed up and I escorted them off my land. Before they left, a-hole 1 remarks, "We will return, and we will stop your senseless killings, etc." I laughed, told them good day, and assessed the damage they had done. The a-holes cut down several trees. Why they did not use dead ones, I have no idea. Found empty beer cans and a single roach on a tree stump. I detest drug use. The roach really pissed me off. And what they had said earlier about coming back and off-roading sparked an idea in my brain. I knew what area he was referring to, my buds, and I have off-roaded there before, so I prepared the area for the a-hole. I wanted to plant native prairie grass where we off-roaded, so I staked about 200 meters of barbed wire where I intended to plant the grass at a later time. I pretty much left it at that, and the next few weeks were uneventful. It was late October, and I was in my duck blind one afternoon. Shot my limit of pheasants in the morning, so I figured I would try to pick off a few ducks with some buds. A flock of geese land in our decoys, but we did not shoot them. We watched them for a bit, and then we heard loud music from an oncoming car. It was the a-holes. I watched as they drove through my land and headed for the off-roading area. I informed my buddies of my prairie grass project, and we all began laughing when they entered the barbed wire area. It should also be noted their music scared the geese away. A minute or so passed, and we could not hear their engine running. We left the blind to investigate. What we came up on was a thing of beauty. Most, if not all, of the barbed wire was gone, mangled in the Subaru's axles. A-hole 1 is freaking out, and a-hole 2 is assessing the damage. When we came up on them, a-hole 1 started yelling at me, saying he would sue me for damaging his vehicle. I laughed and told him to get off my damn land before I call law enforcement. He laughed and said I should. I did, too, to be exact. I called our local conservation officer and the sheriff. I told the sheriff I had trespassers that refused to leave. I told the CO I had non-hunters harassing hunters and wild game. He got a harden after hearing that and told me he would be there within the hour. 10 minutes passed and the sheriff shows up. I let the a-holes explain themselves. They said I had given them permission and I destroyed their car. The sheriff looks at them, then asks me, "Do they have permission?" I said no, and that I suspect they are under the influence of something, as no logical person would drive through barbed wire. The sheriff asked why I thought that. I said last time they trespassed, they left empties and a roach. His eyes gleamed, and he told the two a-holes to empty their pockets and that he would search the car. What happened next was hilarious. There was nothing in their car. A-hole 1 had nothing in his pockets, but a-hole 2 started crying. He had pot on him. So in addition to trespassing, a-hole 2 was cited for possessing illegal drugs. The sheriff then told the two they had to figure out how to get their vehicle off my land. He offered to give them both a ride back to the university so they could sort it out. Then the CO arrives at the perfect time. I told him they had trespassed, and in doing so harassed hunters. Hunter harassment laws are open to interpretation in my state, but given the situation, the CO issued both of them 3 tickets for harassing hunters. That's a misdemeanor and over $5,000 in fines. I also mentioned they cut down trees on my land. A-hole 2 says that was not me, that was a-hole 1. So a-hole 1 is also charged with destroying property. We are laughing our asses off as the sheriff takes them away. I did not hear from the a-holes for a few days, then I got a letter in the mail. It was from a-hole 1. He was asking for written permission to retrieve his vehicle from my land. He gave me his number to contact him so we could sort it out. The call went something like this. A-hole 1. Hello? Me. I read you want permission to retrieve your vehicle from my land. A-hole 1. Yes, me. Permission denied. You can have someone on your behalf retrieve it for you. A-hole 1. What? Me. There is a towing service you can call. You are not to set foot on my land. A-hole 1. Duck you, man, me. Have a nice day. The next day I get a call from the towing service asking if they can go back and retrieve the Subaru. I say yes, but that a-hole 1 cannot set foot on my land. He agrees and I take him to where the mangled Subaru is. It took about 2 hours for him to pull the Subaru out from its barbed wire bed. This made a-hole 1 quite mad. He told the driver to hurry up, which pissed him off. When he got the Subaru to the road, a-hole 1 started cussing him out. The driver told him, "You know what? I won't charge you for this. He detached the Subaru and left it on the road and drove off. At this point, I am laughing like a madman and told a-hole one to have a nice day. His car turned on but would not budge. He was getting really flustered and had a meltdown. He called a-hole 2 to pick him up. I stayed there to make sure they did not do anything else. As he was leaving, a-hole 1 spat on my car. They left the Subaru on the road. When they were gone, I called law enforcement one last time and said someone was illegally parked on a road. I gave them the location, and an hour later, they were towing the Subaru away. I never heard from the a-holes again. Do not duck with a man's land. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work as a support manager for a company that sells credit card readers and other services for processing money. Our story starts with a phone call that one of our newest staff members received. The caller does not introduce themselves and instead loudly demands to speak to no less than the CEO of the company and will not give any information aside from his repeated demands and some indirect swearing. Normally, this would earn them a terminated call, but I want to know who has the balls to scream at my staff, so I have him transferred over. Having had some of these calls before, I introduce myself with a very fancy title and ensure the caller that whatever his support needs are, I can handle them without any issue. The CEO is busy at the moment, and I am next in line in the support organization. This is not entirely true, but it works to calm people down and get them to tell me what is actually wrong. The caller is named Steve. Not just any Steve, mind you, but Steve, the owner of Steve's Cafe. And not just one Steve's Cafe, mind you, but the owner of all 7 Steve's Cafes. Steve is offended that he was given to me and not the CEO like he demanded. He is the owner you see and needs to talk to my owner. Not me. I don't own 7 cafes and I certainly don't own my company. So I can't understand Steve's needs and can't make the hard choices he needs made. I again assure him that I do have the position and authority to do anything he requires. I am the manager of the support department. I can make any changes he requires. I can set up new accounts or order new devices, anything. He only needs to tell me his problems and I will provide solutions. I will support him. The words are immediate and aggressive. Can you cancel my accounts? Well, yes, I can. I inform him that we need a written request to cancel. I also try to inquire why he needs to cancel his accounts. This is standard procedure. If he wants to close his account, then we close his account, but any feedback is useful. Is he leaving because our product was bad? Because our service was bad? Because he found a better deal? But before I can get more than a few words out, he shouts again, "Have the CEO call me! He has my number." And he disconnects. I report this up the chain. No email means no cancellation, but still, bosses need to know. First thing next morning, I get invited to an emergency meeting by the CEO, as well as a few other pertinent admins. We go over what happened, then I am shown an email. Steve managed to find the CEO's internal email address and sent him an email complaining about one of his 7 stores having a horrible time with the product. He is demanding no less than the cancellation of all his accounts and a refund for 3 months of payments he has made for each, as the product is totally unusable. I check the logs. The problem location does indeed have a problem. That started yesterday morning. They are not down, but they are having a bad time. There are no emails or calls informing us. Just the screaming cancellation request. I send over the call logs, and we listen to Steve scream and curse at the support agent before he got sent to me. And then I hear 2 words that cue the malicious compliance. Cancel them. The meeting goes quiet. The CEO has spoken. We cancel all 7 accounts and shut down services. They start their day with devices that do not work. The calls come in. Again, the CEO speaks. That account is canceled. Follow procedure. So each manager calls me frantically explaining that nothing is working. The staff apologetically tell them that their account was canceled per their owner's email. We can no longer provide support. Shortly thereafter, the owner calls in, once again screaming to turn them back on. Uncancel them this instant. Get the devices working. He is losing money. I check with the CEO, and after receiving a nod, I say, "Per your request made over the phone yesterday and your email this morning, your accounts have been canceled." Steve just gets madder and says he didn't mean to actually cancel them. He just wanted to let us know what would happen if we didn't fix his issue. He continues to yell. I let the CEO know, and at his request, I transfer Steve to his office phone. I wish there was a satisfying ending to this story, but Steve and our boss talked. Steve was informed that his behavior was unacceptable. Steve admitted that he was expecting expedited service and possibly a discount when he threatened to cancel. He didn't really want to cancel his accounts. He just wanted support to take him seriously and transfer him up the chain so he could get faster, better service. There was no real apology, though both I and the initial support agent were told that Steve would behave himself from now on, and to report if he didn't. Services were resumed and all 7 locations were opened a bit late. The one location that did have issues yesterday got on the phone with a support agent and were sorted out in a reasonable amount of time. All is right in heaven and earth, but I do hope Steve learned that threatening to cancel your account sometimes leads to you canceling your account, and not to a discount. The next one is an entitled people story. When I was a property shepherd for banks that foreclosed on properties, I was often asked to see if the occupants would accept money in exchange for surrendering the property in clean, intact condition and skipping the eviction. I had nothing to do with the foreclosure or eviction, and they used me because the lawyers charged hundreds of dollars an hour for that kind of thing. They prepared the offer, I presented it. If they said yes, the bank sent me a check. I inspected the house, and if it was clean and intact, handed over the check. Important note, there was an eviction clock running. If I did not report that they had complied with the agreement, the eviction would proceed. They did not stop that process unless I was successful, so I was helpless to grant extra time to move out beyond. The agreement says be out by the 14th, you are working hard, the bank is closed, I can come back first thing in the morning, and if you are done, I'll release the check and tell the bank you complied. I was dealing with a couple in a 4,000 square feet house. They had been fighting the foreclosures, then fighting the eviction, and the bank and lawyers were sick of them. I delivered the offer. $3,500 to be out in 2 weeks. It was explicitly clear that I was not from the bank. I was not from the lawyer's office. They showed up at my office anyway and tried to convince us to sell them the house. The house which was not for sale, which they couldn't afford or they wouldn't be facing eviction, which wasn't ours. They didn't like any of those truths. Said we had better start checking under our car before starting it up and stormed out. They wanted the money. And I always did what little I could to help people make the deadline. I always offered to come by a few days early and point out what needed to be clean. Normal wear and tear? No problem. Stained carpet? This isn't a security deposit, so unless it was a fresh, intentional stain, I didn't care. Missing fixtures? That's a problem. Unswept floors? Problem. Bags of rotting food in the garage? You get the picture. I went over for a pre-inspection. Not even close. I pointed out what needed to happen. They asked if they could have the check now to hire cleaners, and they would totally have it ready in time. Being ugly, not stupid, I declined and said I would see them on the date they agreed to. I show up. They hadn't cleaned up anything since my previous visit. They demanded the check anyway. They worked hard to come up with excuses. They were tired after threatening to kill me with a car bomb. They needed the money for the down payment on another house. Won't I do them a favor? They will do anything for the check except clean. I marked them non-compliant and left, returning the check to the lawyer's office. A week later, the lawyer's office told me I was free to take possession of the house and start my processes. Still lots of trash, grime everywhere, many missing light fixtures. Best of all, they had taken all of the towel racks and toilet paper holders, ripping them straight out of the wall along with significant chunks of drywall. They sure taught me a lesson by damaging a house that wasn't mine. And for skipping at best 3 hours of cleaning, they lost out on $3,500 even though they deserved that money for being stressed. Anyway, thank